Thank you for tuning in to the Gateway RV Transport Podcast. This is Justin and Jordan. Today we're going to be talking about ways to prepare for various emergencies that might happen out on the road and some just general principles. And so I can start if you'd like.
Yeah, well, just keep in mind, I guess as we start, there are an infinite number of emergent possibilities out there. So just as in everything else, just use your best judgment. Always be smart.
Yeah. And I don't think none of the ideas that I have are particularly unusual and are pretty common sense. So that being said, we'd be interested in getting feedback from your experience on what has been helpful to have. So I'm going to go through a few of the things that have been helpful for me in the various situations I've encountered. Luckily, I've never experienced, I think, what I would categorize as a legitimate emergency. But I want to be ready in case. So blankets and things like that. So dealing with winter weather stuff. So having your driver box. So in fact, we're sitting in our office. I have my driver boxes. I have a couple of different versions. I have my shuttle box, which is a quick grab and go for when I need to just hop in a truck and shuttle factories or shuttle units from factories locally. Then I have my over the road. I have actually two boxes.
When you say boxes, it's like a clear tote, or
like that one of them's a clear tote. The other one's like this little black box, or this larger black box with some different tools. So every time that I have an issue and I think, I need that, I'll get it in there and throw it in that box. So I have jumper cables in there because of the times that I wish I had jumper cables, sockets, and duct tape, ratchet strap, bungees, stuff like that. But I also have like some blankets in there, a pillow in there, as well as because I need that to sleep. So then I also have that pad, which just sleeping on the road, we might have kind of talked about this, but I really like that 4-inch cutout pad. That's been the best thing that I've experienced.
Yeah.
I just got from Home Depot.
In fact, I think we have an episode that's dedicated to your sleeping arrangements.
Yeah. So you probably have blankets and stuff anyway, but you want to be prepared for not to have heat in your truck that you would be able to stay warm. Then just different tools. Again, the general principle I use for tools is you need it once, get it, and then you have it. And so I have a few different things. Like scissors isn't something like I use that all the time. Bungees. Like I've had the underbelly fall out of the trailer, which is the cheap sometimes, like almost cardboard like thing that they put at the bottom, the underside of the camper that covers up the plumbing and electrical and stuff like that. And then a good idea is to have a tow strap. So we try and keep, although they seem to wander off, a tow strap in each one of the trucks. I have gotten stuck up in the mud before and been glad that I had one. I've had to have the tractor guy pull me out in Topeka, or I was up picking up in Wakarusa once and I had to have somebody pull me out of the mud. And so having a tow strap is a good idea. And then especially right now, this time of year, chains. You need chains for your tires. So we sell them here. If you don't have them, come buy some from us or buy them online. But you need to have chains with you, as some of the states require them. Honestly, if you need chains to be pulling, you shouldn't be pulling an RV anyway. But just for the legality part, certain states require chains. But the general principle is if you need chains, they shouldn't be out there. Then having some food and water, first aid kit, that kind of stuff. So that's as far as supplies, things to have with you. That's some of the stuff that I try to have.
Yeah. Well, so just I'll add 2 cents on that. Some like non-perishable foods. Not if you pack a bologna sandwich, that'll be good for a couple days, but not for a long time. Especially if you are, and I don't know if we've had any drivers like stranded in their truck for several days, like in a blizzard scenario. I mean, people have been shut down for sure, but they've been able to get to a rest stop or whatever.
Yeah.
So some of these preparations are for even more dramatic scenarios, but they do happen. But so maybe some non-perishable foods, for example. I know a lot of drivers have a dog for that reason. I'm just kidding. That is
really desperate type.
Just joking. I have and love dogs.
Yes.
So that is just a bad joke. And then some of the stuff you're required to have for compliance. So like a fire extinguisher, you're required to have triangles, road flares, or things that you're supposed to have. An extra fuel. So just going into the items you should have. Having an extra fuel tank is good for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is emergency situations. So like a emergency lowercase e that a lot of drivers do run into is no fuel station in sight. and coming close to an empty tank. So that is a very stressful situation that does happen probably fairly often in the scheme of things. That is easy to avoid, but one of the preparedness factors would be having a tank that's, of course, full as regularly. And it's probably good practice to when I'm on the road and have an extra fuel tank, I'll use fuel until my auxiliary tank is gone. So I'll fill up my main tank one last time. But once my auxiliary tank is gone, then it's time to refuel. Even if I have a full regular tank, auxiliary tank's empty, time to find fuel. So anyway, yeah, carry on.
So the other thing I would say as far as the supplies aspect, for the most part, like you're saying, I don't know that you're going the emergency where like you're stranded in a blizzard and, that kind of thing. But breakdowns and other issues. So like things that I have wished that I'd had is properly dressed, right? So you coming up from the south and you don't come prepared for the winter weather up here, where the weather where you're at is not the same as the weather where you're going. So you should be mindful of that, as well as sometimes I've wished I'd had other things like stepping in a big puddle and now my shoes and socks are soaked. And so being glad like I had an extra pair of shoes, but that's a pretty likely situation. As well as there's been a couple times that like it's rainy. And so you bring one jacket and it gets soaked. It's kind of useless.
I have a rain poncho in my box for that reason.
That kind of thing. And then, so like, really it's just a matter of preparedness. So just as a like quick side note, we talked a little bit about camping probably on here before, but we grew up camping. I went camping all the time with the Boy Scout program, which isn't what it used to be, but at the time it was a great program at least. And my friend Blake would always be really well prepared. He always had all the stuff. And I would be somewhere in the middle, and you'd get the whole spectrum of things. But it's not like we were in life and death situation. I think when you think of emergency preparedness, it's not you're probably going to be fine. Like you're not going to die out there on the road. Like we live in a pretty cushy country full of gas stations and things, and people are. It's unlikely that could still happen. You just need to be prepared. But the preparation side of that is a lot more likely. So being, is that what, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, because that is the Boy Scout motto.
Yeah.
Be prepared. Some of my Boy Scout adventure stories maybe were not at the precipice of death, but some of them were pretty high risk. Looking back, I think I would not trust my 15-year-old son to be doing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But like times have changed a little bit.
Yeah, whitewater rafting or rappelling or caving and stuff. Some of that kind of that.
Being chased by 800-pound animals is kind of scary. Or stuck in a lightning storm above the timberline in a mountain range that's like 40 miles from civilization, or sending them off on their own. There's one camp. I mean, this is a huge tangent from where we're going, but it's kind of fun. Yeah. Here's some coordinates, 14-year-old boy. Follow these coordinates with your compass and go spend the night and then come back tomorrow. See ya.
See, I love it. I
do too. Well, I do. Yeah.
I wish that I got to do more of that stuff now, and I think so. Anyway, this again, as a tangent, but the Boy Scout program, again, not what it used to be. I wish there was something that has filled that void effectively. There's some great stuff out there, but I think when I think about my kid, and we've talked about this, and as far as preparedness goes, it is related in the sense that most of the preparations for things is not necessarily just the stuff you have, but it's the skills and knowledge that you have on stuff.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I will say some of the stuff that I did learn in there, for example, like some emergency preparedness in regard to like somebody's drowning. So being 17, 18 at I had this. I don't know if you've had.
Yeah, I remember your story.
I mean,
I've
just
never
like
had this happen, but yeah.
At a high school graduation party, the high school friend of mine was a swimmer, was drowning, and there's like 30 people there, but nobody had done any emergency preparedness training except for me. And so me and another guy were able to pull him out and start CPR and save him. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he would
might have been fine.
Might have been fine.
Not
but either way, it's the preparedness. There's a huge mental factor. I mean, everybody there was physically capable of doing anything that here I did, but just knowing what to do beforehand, having already gone through just the mental exercise of what would I do if we were able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and connecting that to, so taking the CDL test, like one of the things they have you do during the road test is have you pull off to do an emergency stop where you set up your triangles, the 10 feet, 100 feet, that whole situation, 300 feet, or like what if you're on a hill, what if it's on a curve? And so you're running through these different scenarios. And so you actually do and I'm trying to remember when I took my test, out in New Haven, Indiana, stopped and did a mock emergency stop. Not a full one. We just did kind of a test one to make sure you kind of got the concept, but a good idea to do that kind of stuff sometimes. What are you going to do if you break down? So I have another next section.
Yep.
Having some financial reserves is a big one. That is a big indicator between a professional and an amateur in this industry is someone that has the forethought to set aside some money for, and it's not a diss on somebody. I mean, sometimes the situation, you burn through your savings and then you have another problem and now you're having to beg, borrow, and do whatever. But it definitely, the most elite members of our team are the most prepared, and financial preparations is one of the biggest, if not in this situation, the biggest.
We talk a lot about thresholds, and those are some of those thresholds, personal thresholds that you should aim for. And once you get there, aim for the next thing. So you might have a threshold of, you might be in a position right now the position you might be in now could be check to check. So like when you deliver, you need your money now. So paying the extra fees to get paid expedited pay, that might be where you're at. So set a threshold of, okay, I want to get to the position where I don't need that. I can wait to the regular pay cycle, and then setting another threshold goal of prepay for the trip is already paid for. I'm not using a fuel card or using a credit card. I'm in a position where I can fund the whole trip myself. And obviously this can apply to almost any facet of everyday life, but set yourself a threshold goal. And when you get to that threshold, it should open up more possibilities, which can enhance and increase your success and efficiency exponentially. And every threshold just does that more and more.
And we've talked about that. We call it the thresholds of freedom type thing, right? So like we've talked about with Gateway, the different thresholds that we've reached and the ones that we're hoping to reach. And it's the same thing on the kind of more macro level of us as a business. There's some things that we'd really like to do that we have some limitations that are keeping us from doing that. And so the same thing as we unlock these kind of financial checkpoints, which hopefully, over the next couple of years, we'll have some of those. A lot of ours have to do with kind of assets and lots and probably won't get into all of that, but it's the same principle, like you said. And so,
and realistically, you should be having that in your personal finances, in your professional advancement, any area that you should be improving. Now, there is something to be said for being happy with where you're at, but at the same time, balancing your contentment. You're content, not complacent, I guess, and always trying to do better.
Yeah. The next section that I have is just basically pre-trip. So it's it's the same principle, preparation stuff. So if you do a good pre-trip and you're keeping track of stuff and you're not putting things off, and I'm trying to that's again, it's a general thing that applies to so many facets of life, but taking care of things ahead of time, being proactive now so that you're not having to have problems later. So a lot of the things that have come to, the check engine light, right? One way to deal with that is to take a piece of electrical tape and tape over on so you don't see the check engine light, which anybody who's borrowed a Gateway truck before, that has in the past been, it's not my way of dealing with it. I'm not a big fan of that approach. But anyway, is dealing with it, is not getting, it's the same thing like fuel. I hate getting in a vehicle and having an eighth of a tank of fuel type thing. So I'm pretty comfortable the way my car is very rarely under a quarter tank. It just drives me nuts, right? And I know some people are even better at that kind of thing, but it's this idea of taking care of it now. There's a few of our drivers who have had basically tons of different spare parts with them in their truck, and probably won't go through like names of individual people, but they'll have alternators. I've had some guys that have a full transmission with them in their truck, all this stuff. And so depending on, you can take it to the extreme and depending on how much room you have, but having some basic parts and things with you. So that's that section for me.
Yeah, and along with that is knowing how to replace an alternator. I mean, you don't
I
need to
don't know
be
how.
a full diesel mechanic. I mean, obviously, the more knowledge you have, the better off you're going to be. But there is a, a place where it's not reasonable to expect. It's not reasonable to expect that all of our drivers are certified diesel mechanics, but it is pretty reasonable to expect that all of our drivers can change a tire, and that all or most could change their oil, or a good percentage would be able to diagnose certain problems that they have on the road. I had thought, in my mind, at least, it's very easy to think, okay, changing an alternator. Those are words that I've heard, but I don't really know. So that seems very daunting. And then I was with a guy who changed my alternator, and man, that was pretty straightforward. Every set of circumstances is going to be different. But a few weeks ago, just in my personal car, changed a spark plug in the coil pack, which before that I would have thought that's beyond what I can do. Just watching somebody walk me through it, man, I did it all.
Yeah.
Man, it was very easy. It just was. I had to get over the fear of the unknown, I guess. But so one of the emergency preparedness, one of the things you can prepare, how you can prepare, is by just becoming a little better acquainted with maintenance and the how tos. So, yeah. Anyway, it might just be a matter of being good at YouTubing, which, to be honest, is a big part of maintenance. I wouldn't be that shocked if a significant percentage of people in mechanics shops, mechanics and the people that help them, are spending time on YouTube every day figuring out how to change this. And to be honest, that doesn't bother me. Like, even if I took my truck into a shop and I saw them on YouTube trying to figure it out, you know what? That's I mean, there is of course
Yeah,
an extreme.
yeah, I agree though. Well, I just have a couple of other things, and it's just checking the weather, know before you go. That's the big one, especially this time of year.
But during one kind of add on to that, I like to bring this up during orientation, especially for drivers who are maybe not as experienced in this world. But there are some things you can't prepare for. You don't know. And just getting in the truck means that you're stepping into an unknown risk. I mean, that's true of any time we get in the car. I mean, and to be honest, anytime we get out of our house, there's some risk associated with it. So if you think that you are completely absolved of any risk, then that is absolutely not true, especially in this industry. There is some risk and unknowns and just crappy stuff that happens to you. Some of the things that you cannot control are the weather. You can't control the weather. You also can't control when a certain state's going to do road maintenance on highways that you use regularly. You can't control that. You can't control other drivers. But you can mitigate a lot of that risk. You can look at the weather beforehand and plan accordingly. So just hopping in a truck, hooking up, and hitting the road is kind of irresponsible. Unless you like to live on the thrill of the unknown, that would add another element of that. But you should be looking at the weather and not just a casual glance at the 24-hour forecast. You should be looking at the weather along your route and when you expect to be there. Because if you're going to California, the weather is going to be different at different times in different states. You're traveling a significant distance. So you can't change the weather, but you certainly can mitigate your risk by being prepared, knowing what it is, and planning around that. Same thing with road construction. You can't control what roads are going to be under construction or not, but you can control a route you use, and maybe it is a route is under construction that you can't avoid. Well, you can have control of when you're going through there. Going through construction in Chicago at rush hour is going to add, there's more risk than if you were going to go off peak times. So you can control some of these risk factors that a lot of drivers I know just kind of chalk up to, I have no control, therefore I'm just going to play it as it comes. There are things that you can do to control for that you can, yeah, mitigate some of that risk.
And I think so. My last kind of principle just goes along with what you're saying. Is the general principle is just to have as much of the locus of control within yourself as possible. And this is generally just kind of the philosophy on people. The happiest people that I know, or the most successful people that I know, the commonalities of like people that I strive to emulate are people that feel like they're in the driver's seat of their own lives. And the people who constantly complain, it's always someone else's fault. They don't take any accountability, responsibility, or ownership for their own lives. Somebody else is at the driver's seat. They're not the main. They're not the hero of their own story. They're not the main character of their movie, right? That type of thing. And so the general principle in emergency prep, as well as just in so many different aspects, is to control what you can control and to take ownership of what you can. And that applies to a lot of different things. So like different emergency self-defense type things, being physically healthy and capable and within the limitations of your circumstances, doing your best. And so that's the general principle is just, and the hard part is the people who, and I mean, we're all working on this to varying degrees, but the people who need that message the most of stop complaining and blaming everything on other people are not people that are going to internalize that message anyway. And then some people take it too far and they blame things that are outside of their control on themselves, and it's counterproductive. So yeah, it is a balance in everything. But I guess the general principle that I am trying to adhere to myself, but also continuing to preach, is just you get out what you put in. You need to take ownership. You need to, like, if you're having an issue that you need to think what you could have done differently. Maybe it wasn't entirely your fault, but there is some degree of accountability that you can take for almost every situation that will ever happen to you. Not all of it. It's like you can come up with tons of extreme examples, but in being prepared, it's up to you.
Yeah. Well, a few more points that I'll add on is have a communication plan. And so just know what you're going to do in the event, who you're going to call, how to call them. What if your communication ability is hindered? You lose your phone. I mean, that might not be a national catastrophe, but losing a phone can be a big deal for an individual. So what are you going to do in that instance? And have people that you check in with regularly. And so if you, for some reason, didn't call up at one day, that it's not, I mean, that somebody knows, just kind of the buddy program, which is kind of built into most people's family dynamics, but not all. And so everybody's circumstances are going to be different. So make sure you have somebody that is, that you communicate with regularly and have kind of a plan worked out to what to do. We've talked about alternative routes, and I think it's a good idea to always have a contingency plan, kind of go into another Jocko dictate, of just always have a contingency plan. What if, and what am I going to do about it? There are roadside assistance programs that you can join. There is a cost benefit calculation that you'll need to do on some of these. Some of them are expensive and some offer things that may not be particularly helpful in our case. I know there are some like Good Sam kind of programs that apply to you if you own a personal RV, but not transport.
I thought we'd looked into that before, and there might be...
Well, and it's been a few years, and maybe it's changed. Maybe we should just look into it again. Yeah. But there are some programs. I remember looking into one. It might not have been that particular one, but it didn't apply because these were not owned by the person transporting them.
That makes sense.
Stay informed on the emergency protocols. That's kind of a learn it once. What should you do in
like setting up your triangles? And a couple little practical tips when I had to set up the triangles when I was stuck in Canada, and I trying to explain this to somebody on the phone because they just keep blowing over. And they like the ones that I have. You make it perpecular, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So like the base,
you have to rotate it to where it sits down properly.
Just like once I realized, oh yeah, that was a stupid thing. When it's like, why they kept blowing over? It's like these are pointless. Why do I even have these? It's like, oh yeah, I'm not setting it up right. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense, that visual. But as well, so like you should know the distance. So it's like, what is it? It's the 10, 100, 100 that you put the triangles behind, and then if you're on a curve or a hill, you alter that. So anyway, a few more ones related to the driving. We've talked about kind of self-defense just briefly. And I think the reason you brought that up was because we do have drivers that have had scenarios where they have been physically attacked. It's not often, but the fact that it has happened at all is cause enough for concern that you should have a plan.
and that includes knowing where you're going to stop at night, staying at trusted places. The more you are out there, the more you are able to develop a repertoire of where to stop. You know, like a what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, a Rolodex of all of the places that you can stop, and it's safe or convenient, etc. And then having just some personal defense plan. Now, you're not supposed to be carrying a firearm in a commercial vehicle, or can you?
This is where I tend to not lean too far into that, and so like when I'm doing orientations, to say I'm not going to go into the weeds on that because it's complicated from what I understand with the different state regulations, and I don't know. So
yeah,
I mean, obviously I know you can't. Canada is a lot more cut and dry.
Yeah,
but I kind of intentionally stay out of the weeds on all of that stuff because it kind of can get complicated.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I know whether it's company policy or not in the trucking world, there are a lot of people that do. I'm not saying that they are supposed to or are allowed to, or depending on regulations. And I don't want to condone illegal activity if you're not permitted to be carrying, maybe. And I know there are some circumstances you can have a firearm as long as the ammunition is in a loaded, is in a locked box out, not in the same location as the gun. There's
Kevin's story when he was driving the armored truck and him and Mark Wallace got stopped by the cops.
Has he not? Yeah, there is. There's a full episode on that trip.
Oh, there is. Okay.
No, there should be. Yeah, there should be.
That's quite the story.
So, but then also related to defensive driving. So just be prepared with aggressive drivers. This industry has been marred a little bit by instances of aggressive driving and
like 2016, one of our big companies got a nuclear lawsuit, shut them down because one of their guys lost his temper and went at it.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that the company was shut down is bad, but the worst scenario of that was that people died in that situation. So in both instances, whether you are I guess the victim of an aggressive driver, or if you have the tendency or can become an aggressive driver yourself, you should take preventative action to avoid that.
I have a kind of a sermon that I preach about this I think it shows something about I don't know, let me rephrase this. People sometimes think that it's okay for them to be nutcases when they're driving. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I'm a pretty calm person, except when I get road rage." It's like as if that's some sort of excuse. And I'm for some reason that's a pet peeve of mine that people think that the normal general rules of social conduct are less strict when you're behind the wheel, and that just is a weird thing to me. So like people that you wouldn't normally freak out over something, when they freak out about somebody cuts them off, or like I have cut people off plenty of times, and it's always on accident. And I have been cut off more times than I've cut people off, I would assume, because I'm one of those people that drives the speed limit. After I got a ticket in 2018, and I don't really speed anymore, hardly ever. If I do, it's not that often. But it just is one of those things that just, like, if you're one of those people, just know that I think that's a lame excuse to say, I'm a good person except for when I'm driving type thing, or I'm a calm person. Like, it doesn't check out.
I love the image of you're in a car, somebody else is in a car, you get into a situation in a parking lot where somebody's has a right of way and you have to figure it out and you're losing your temper. Those two same people can go into the supermarket of which they have just parked and do the same thing with their shopping carts, and all of a sudden it's a totally different dynamic, even though it's the same people, the same situation, just with different vehicles involved.
And I get part of it, in the sense that the stakes are a lot higher. Obviously, in a parking lot, you're dealing with either safety or dollar values of so there is that, but it's still,
and then also the proximity is a big thing.
Yeah,
because there's some sort of like anonymity
effect
of when you're in your own little capsule and they're in theirs, and it's almost like you're just comment bashing online, and it's only one in between in person. And
I think that's a pretty good parallel too. It's like people think that the rules don't apply when they have some anonymity. anemone. But that's just a weird thing to me. It's like, we all have, like, I'm not preaching from a perfect place here, but you're the same person. And so to try and, I don't know, for every reason that bothers me is somebody when they're talking and they think that it's okay. It's like, man, that's not anyway.
Yeah. There's been a few instances, and again, I'm not advocating that anybody else do this either, because people are crazy. But where somebody loses their temper at me, I'll roll my window down and they roll theirs in expectation of we are just going to start screaming at each other. And I will diffuse. Every situation is a little bit different, but this happened a couple years ago, and I said, "Hey, I'm really sorry that I thought you were supposed to turn. You were turning there, but you didn't have your signal on. I should have yielded anyway. So you know what? Sorry about that." And totally diffused them.
You've probably seen these. The guy that, hey, and then he gives them like a compliment. Like, so you're at the stoplight. There's this comedian guy on.
I think I've seen.
He's like, "Hey, could you do me a favor and save some women for the rest of us?"
Yeah,
that kind of, like, that's the joke.
Yeah,
it's like, if you haven't looked that up, you've probably seen it.
Yeah, but that does, I don't know, shed a little light on the American psyche. When you roll down your window at a stoplight, the person that you're about to interact with is assuming that it's about to be a negative experience.
Yeah,
probably most of the time. And so maybe we should have some sort of concerted effort to interact with people in a positive way.
There's a bunch of these like funny versions of that where it's like somebody's walking down the street and they like aggressive compliments and be like, "Hey, you look like the type of guy who always shows up on time."
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Anyway.
The only other one I had was consciously practice situational awareness. Monitor your surroundings. Pay attention to your environment when you feel safe, when you don't feel safe, and trust your instincts. If something feels off, it very likely could be off. And so, it's better to assume that your instincts are right, change your circumstances to where you feel comfortable, and deal with what if I was just overthinking it? That's a better case scenario than you had an instinct, you didn't follow it, and something bad happened.
And tack on one side comment about that one of the things I like that they do when you get your CDLs, you have to, at least of the state of Indiana, you have to watch this video and take this little quiz to prove that you watched the video on human trafficking. And so if you see something weird, like that trusting the instincts thing, and you see this all over the place. And if you're not a trucker, you'll be increasingly aware of this if you look for it. But there are signs at every rest stop and all the truck stops about watching for signs of human trafficking and things like that. But if you see something weird, like you have an obligation, and I would add an increased obligation over the general population because you're a professional in this industry, to do something. And so, like, I've thought about this before, like, if you have kids and like if I'm loading up a kid who's screaming and like, I thought, what if somebody would have thought, and I look shady to them, if they would have come up and confronted me, I would, and initially I think there's a part of you that would always be a slight offense, but I would appreciate that they are willing to risk offending me to protect a child in that case. Mm-hmm. And so like if they're like, "Hey, I'm sure that's your kid, but I've got kids of my own and I'm just sensitive to this type of," and so like if somebody approached me in the right way, I would maybe be a little bit offended, but like also really grateful that people would stand up for people that can't stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
And so I would just add that as, if you see something weird, it doesn't have to be just like human trafficking, like just the worst stuff, but just inconsiderate people. Like, I was walking out of a Walmart, somebody was just being really rude to the greeter or whatever. It's like, we have an obligation to stand up for those types of people. And so, not that it's exactly connected to the theme of this podcast, but I think it relates.
No, I agree. And I think that the more confident I am, the more I'm willing to do that. And the more I do that, the more confident I am. Because, this happened a few weeks ago. In the line at Walmart, somebody in the line in front of me made a racist remark about somebody else further ahead in the line, and then looked at me to confirm their comment. And I said, "That's not funny at all. That's incredibly off-putting." And that person completely shut up immediately. But and to be honest, the reason that I did that is because my daughter was with me, and I wanted her to see me stand up for what I thought was right. If she hadn't been there, I don't think I would have. I think I would have been like, whatever. But I thought this is a good teaching opportunity, so I took it. But I felt so much like I wore that kind of pride on my shoulders the rest of the night. And so look for ways to stand up. Now, don't don't be antagonistic and try to just insert yourself in situations that don't actually need it. But I think it's good to have people that are willing to stand up for what's right, even if it's socially uncomfortable, especially if it's socially uncomfortable.
Yeah. Like, I know we're probably wrapping up here, but I think I told you that Hannah my wife was at the mall, and she saw some people raking in a bunch of the stuff into the bags. So she called me. It's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, it's like, don't confront them. Don't put yourself in harm's way or whatever. But like, I'll call the mall security and let them know and all this kind of stuff. And so anyway, because like I didn't want her to be in a dangerous position, but she heard all this ruffling. There was these two people, a man and a woman, and they were just like scraping in all this stuff and loading them into the bags and walking out. And so it's like, I'll report to security after they leave. Go tell the teenager working at the mall or whatever. So anyway.
Yeah, true. You don't want to put yourself in a situation like.
And she had, I think, my daughter with her.
Yeah, a woman on her own with small children. That is a different scenario than,
Like, it's one of the things that drives me nuts is the same things. Like, if I don't mind when people come up to me in the parking lot asking for money or asking for whatever, kind of panhandling in the parking lot or whatever. I hate when they do that to, like, there's a mother struggling with two kids loading them up, and some grown man, some 50-year-old man, is coming up harassing her for money or whatever. I hate that. That crap bothers me because it's like, I don't care. Like, you might be desperate. You do not, especially as a grown man, as a full-grown man, come up to a single mom or a mom just alone with her kids in the parking lot harassing her about getting money. Like, that crap drives me nuts.
Yeah, agreed.
So anyway.
Yep. Well, we got a lot of stories even about that. But maybe for another time.
Okay.
Yeah, of correcting.
Now I'm ready to go fight crime, and I'm dialed in. I'm going to be overly aggressive now.
Well, we love doing these. Hopefully, anybody that listens to these gets even just one iota of utility, some amount of enjoyment or of functional, practical application here. But if not, let us know. Yeah, tell us it sucks, and then that's fine.
But we'll try and get you on the podcast, and then because that's the most fun part is like getting to sit down with our guys and talk to them and learn about them. So
yep. All right. Well, please let us know if you have any comments on anything we talked about or some things to add. I'd love to hear some comments. So anyway,
take care.
Thanks.